Welcome to Executive Access, created for motivated professionals. This is your home for real talk with executives about their career journeys, leadership practices, successes, and learnings along the way. I am your host, Jamie Tazi. Today, I'm speaking to Jennifer Holmstrom, partner at Notable Capital, a venture capital firm based in the Bay Area. Jen talks about the amazing founders in Notable's portfolio, some of their common needs, some common pitfalls that early stage organizations run into, and examples of phenomenal leadership. She is passionate about leadership development and shares insights into why it's important and also her deep expertise around how to do it well. Jen is a dynamic leader, a force of nature, I've always called her, and you will enjoy learning what she has to say. Let's dive in. Welcome to Executive Access. We're with Jen Holmstrom today. She's a partner with Notable Capital, which is a venture capital firm investing in, I think, early to growth stage, mostly technology companies. Is that right, Jen?
Yeah, exactly right.
Great. Well, welcome to the podcast. Maybe you can give us a little bit more background on what you particularly focus on at Notable.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you, Jim. I am Jen Holmstrom. I lead what we call our platform team at Notable Capital. For a little bit of context, we're about a $5 billion venture capital fund. And we invest in companies of all sorts that are have some sort of a technology advantage in the market. And they range from seed stage companies to growth stage companies. So we call that early to late, meaning it might be a company focused on enterprise infrastructure that is, two cousins and their dog, right through to a pre-IPO company that's looking at, 100 to 200 million in revenue and looking for scale and looking for that public market next step. So all over the place in terms of scale are wide ranging. And we have certain sector focus areas that we concentrate on. We have an enterprise infrastructure team that includes, developer tools, security, any kind of enterprise infrastructure that's enabling what all of us kind of subsist on every day in terms of like big scale tech. We have a consumer team, we have a fintech team, and an enterprise SaaS team that's more application layer. And within that, SMB tech and a few kind of API first companies. So we're broad and we love working with the best founders on the planet.
Excellent. And your team within that as the partner around the platform side, you're working across all of those sectors. Is that right?
We do. We are very fortunate to do that and work with these exceptional founders across the board. And what that is we primarily work post-investment. So once the investment team has decided to write a check and invest in a founder and their great team, we jump in and lock arms with that founder and their extended leadership team, and we help them scale and we partner with them to get up that growth curve.
Excellent. I love that. We were talking just before we started recording here about just the differences in our background. So you spent a little bit of time at Facebook, so in a larger organization. I've spent most of my career, except for the last 5 years, in large enterprise. You've spent most of your career working with the stage company. So I'm so excited today to learn about founders and what they face and how you work with them. I am going to ask about your personal leadership as well, but I kind of have you on two hats today, like how you guide and advise founders, what are some of the challenges that they face at that stage organization, and then your own personal leadership.
Okay,
Good.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, great. Well, before we jump in though, I always start with a growth mindset question because I know you're always new. Ever since I've known you, I was wondering if I was going to share this with our listeners, but we go way back. Like we go back to
we do.
18 years old back, right? I think I met you the first day at Boston College and we became fast friends and whatnot. So I know you don't ever slow down. You always keep moving. So what are you doing for fun or for professionally to grow these days?
In the advent where we're sitting today in terms of AI, I feel like this need to understand it, B, get versant and somewhat competent on what's going on in this new technology and what's going to literally transform our world. And so I'm spending some time trying to better understand that. From a technical perspective, what is an LLM? What is model efficiency? What are all these things that are contributing to this, big category of artificial intelligence that's going to have an impact on all of us everywhere? I mean, seemingly, maybe not as significant in a way in the immediate, but certainly in a significant way over the longer term. So I'm trying to get a little bit smarter, Jamie, on what that is, how it's going to impact us, and trying to talk to companies and CEOs and just anybody in terms of, what are the different applications and use cases? How is AI affecting products in technology? How is it affecting productivity across an organization? Now, I feel the need to keep pace with that right now. And it's fascinating because it's fast, it's moving, it's changing, and it's certainly significant.
I love that one. I just listened to a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they said the most interesting thing to me. Most people use, I was using ChatGPT, and they said you use it like you do a web browser or like a search engine. You ask it a question, but don't do that. Talk to ChatGPT or another AI just like you're talking to a friend. So I was like, let me try this out. And I was prepping for a presentation I'm giving, and the organizer asked for an abstract of what I'm going to say. And I'm like, I don't know, I haven't even built my presentation yet, but I know what I'm going to say. So I just dumped it. Hey, I'm talking to you. Here's everything I'm going to talk about. Build me an abstract. Boom, there it comes. And then I was like, well, a little less around that, a little more around this revision. A little less emphasis here. You need to dial up this. But I'm just talking to them like I would you. Jen, in 7 minutes, I had a full abstract, fully edited. It was it saved me hours. I'm like, wow, okay. So now I'm starting to learn.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have 3 children, as I think do you. That generation and future generations, this is going to be second nature. I think they're going to exist with their personal agent, as their sidekick, kind of enabling, as their assistant, enabling their life. I mean, it's really going to be different in terms of general principles of how people go about not only their jobs, but their personal lives. And it's fascinating to me. It feels and it's moving so quickly. I just feel like there's not enough I can do in a day to keep up with it. And I probably never will keep up with it, but I'm trying because to your point, it's really going to transform a lot of things.
100%. And I'm only beginning to scratch the surface and understanding what even how it could, and my husband's way ahead of me, and I'll say something and he's like, you're thinking small. That's and I'm like, okay, well, that's not new, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Well, let me talk about, I want to hear about founders, right? So
yes.
Tell me about the work you do to support founders. Maybe just starting with what are some of the most common needs that they have when you begin working with them after your company invests in them?
Absolutely. So founders to me are some of the most heroic people and brave people out there in the universe. They're driving innovation in the world across all categories, and kind of tech enabling a lot of things, automating a lot of everyday livable processes or workflows or what have you. And I have so much respect for really the founders that have the courage, the grit, the resilience, because it's so hard to get out there and try a new technology and build a company. So just as a backdrop in terms of how I spend my time every day. But the way that we go in and help as a platform team, and what I think, to answer your question, founders need most is one of the things. I'll talk about 5 things. The primary thing is talent. So thinking, and my background personally is in building executive teams and leadership teams for high growth startups. Even I did that at Facebook, and I'll explain a little bit of that as we go on here. But getting access to some of the best talent in the world makes a massive difference to these companies. It can be the difference between success and failure, regardless of whether you have the best product in the market or not. So that's one. Second is customers. Thinking about business development, to your background, Jamie, you have an unbelievable background from Microsoft in terms of selling and understand that go-to-market motion. And so that's the second thing where founders, no matter, even on the consumer companies the enterprise companies, everybody's trying to sell something. Getting that into the hands of the end user is a non-trivial process. So that's the second area where I think founders need a lot of help, and we try to help there too. The third is marketing. So telling your story. It's again, and this is kind of almost, it can be, not always, but can be even divorced from the product. Like, what is the vision and what is the product may be at that point where it's ready or not. But great CEOs and great leaders and great founders, they are phenomenal storytellers, and are very compelling. They have some sort of an emotional appeal and a broader purpose often, and they often really draw you in that way. So that is the third area. The fourth is engineering. We have an exceptional VP of engineering that we are so lucky to work with at Notable, and he helps Notable portfolio companies with engineering velocity. So how good is that particular company? And I think this is actually a big input to an accelerant to scaling on that growth curve, is how fast do you absorb customer input, incorporate it into the product, and then ship code. That's the fourth area. Fifth is leadership development. And we'll talk more about this today, but this is one of my all-time favorite personal passion areas. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, some of these companies start with two cousins and a dog. And as they find product market fit and get success and traction and momentum in the market, they can go very, very quickly from a 2-person, 7-person, 20, 50, 100, 400-person company sitting on 5 continents. And so understanding how to lead, inspire action, drive performance, those are really different environments. The requirements are different, the demands are different. And when the founders' jobs are literally changing every 6 months, we found that I really believe in providing as much support as we can around helping them become the very best leaders they can be.
That's excellent, because I know not all founders are the same, right? They're a diverse set of individuals like the rest of us. Some of them are on their third company they're founding. They've got, they've seen multiple stages. But I imagine a lot of them are, they're either in your space, highly technical. They have this amazing technology or solution. And now, like you say, they're getting some success, and they're leading a team of 10, 20, 50, 100 people.
Right.
And it's like, how did that just happen? I didn't have leadership experience in the back, so I can see how all those things are really good. So what are any type of pitfalls that you see your founders fall into, either at early stage or the slightly higher growth stage?
Great question. So I think one of the things that our second-time founders do differently than our first-time founders, and I think this is just human nature, probably would apply to any one of us, is hiring. A lot of first-time founders hire, this is very human, hire in their own image. So they hire somebody that has been to a similar school as they've been, they've worked at a similar place as they've been. They hire somebody that kind of reminds them of themselves. And that doesn't always equate to the most diverse teams or the most high impact hire they can make. Again, it's unbelievably human to do that. But our second time founders often, they make better hiring decisions, they make them faster, and they do it earlier. So anticipating talent needs is a pitfall that I think is extraordinarily human, but something that is a default setting that founders, that they can get around that and go more on offense around talent strategy versus bringing in a VP of finance or a VP of people or a VP of engineering, frankly. Once they desperately need it, it's a bit of a different scramble than it is when you're more on offense from the beginning.
Is it, what makes them better the second time around? Is it having gone through that mistake, or is it just understanding their own leadership style and their own self better? What do you think it is that makes it better?
I think it's all those things. And I will say with, just to call out an exception, and this is, I'm going to contradict myself, but we're invested in a company called Handshake, which is a career hiring platform. And I've been so privileged to work with Garrett Lord there, who is an unbelievably exceptional leader. And although Handshake is his first company, he's a first-time founder. He is also absolutely so far out in front in terms of anticipating hiring needs and in terms of executive talent and scale. He has been able to punch above his weight and attract and hire some of the best on the planet, well ahead of where his revenue has necessarily mapped. And I think that's because he understood this quandary and kind of our human default setting and got way around it. And he just instinctively understands how to appeal to, how to craft a story, get the narrative right, craft a vision that is compelling to some of the best in the industry. So I think self-awareness and being able to anticipate is a great way of trying to get around that. Others who are second-time founders who do it really well have just learned, to your point, it's cost them both time, money. It's painful to not make the optimal hire. I think it's 100% a part of the process of building a company, but it costs you time and money and what have you. When the wrong executive is brought in at the wrong time.
So it's both about recognizing when you need to hire and what kind of skill set and the people around you that you need to hire, and then the act of going out and being able to excite that amazing leader that has choices that can go to Handshake or can go to anywhere else, and being able to do that. Okay. Excellent.
100%.
Excellent. Yep. So what's some of the most important leadership advice you give to founders as they scale?
I don't even know that I'm frankly qualified to give leadership.
Yes, you are. You're being very humble.
I don't know. But, some of the things, and I think all these founders can learn from each other. There's so much shared learning across the portfolio that putting them together to learn from each other and talk to each other is one of the most powerful things that I think we've done. Just facilitating those conversations has been unbelievable. I literally learn every single day here. And one of the reasons I've been at Notable so long, and this is the longest I've been anywhere in my career, is because I love the learning aspect. I learn every day. Different in terms of sorry, let me track back to the question, just around leadership advice. I think learning, having, to your point about the growth mindset earlier, just constant learning, listening, being a great listener and being a great learner. Those two things as a combination are a powerful set. Every single person on a leadership team within a company, they have different motivations, they have different contexts, they have different purposes that are motivating them. Listening and understanding the one fits one, I think, is a powerful way of being a leader that promotes really high performing teams, a really happy environment that people want to be in, and ultimately drives retention of top talent. The other thing that I have great passion around is creating a strengths-based environment. So we promote a philosophy around called strengths-based management that's been around for a while. But it's really very much about focusing on your team's strengths versus focusing on somebody's weakness or developmental area. And you get to that point of superpower teams because people excel within their areas of strength. So the more that a leader can focus on an individual strength on their team, the better outcomes you typically get.
Does your team do leadership development training and whatnot for the founders and their teams around strength-based and everything else?
We do.
Nice.
We do. So so we have, and this is borrowed from the amazing team at what was called Facebook, now Meta. But I met the amazing Stu Crabb and his partner in crime, Sarah Sperling, while I was there. And Stu was leading the whole leadership development team at Meta. He joined them when they were 400 people, which is actually quite early to establish that leadership and development as a function and invest in it. I think Sheryl Sandberg had kind of came over from Google and who has exceptional leadership development and borrowed that, brought it to Facebook really early, and brought Stu in who designed literally all of the curriculum and the courses and the management and leadership courses for that team at that time. And he was there. He did that for them from when they were 400 employees up through 15,000. And in my experience, I saw that and thought this makes a massive difference in how people show up every day. So borrowing from that, we had the great fortune of having, we do to this day have both Stu and Sarah delivering the content for us for the portfolio.
Oh,
But we have a
fantastic.
platform, called Founders and Leaders, and we deliver kind of a 9 workshop course around managing strengths, psychological safety, managing change, managing up. Hard conversations is one of the most popular ones, but all in the name of creating that leadership, like enabling that leadership capability. And venture-backed companies, or typically there's not like a set program like there will be kind of at a Fortune 1000.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. Leadership development, culture, helping leadership teams understand how to get the best out of people. I wound up speaking to one of the CEOs in your portfolio. I believe at the time the company was around 60 million. And of course, I always do this prep, no matter who I'm talking to. I'm out there searching everything I can find, just prepping on. And I listened to a couple of this founder's podcasts that he was on. And the recent ones he was talking all about culture. I don't know if he was using that word, but, And so I asked him when we spoke, I said, you seem to really care a lot about culture. Like, what's that about? I do too. What's going on? And his answer surprised me. I expected it to be, oh yeah, I'm so passionate about it. It's, something I focus on, which is not necessarily untrue, but his answer was, I'm so surprised at how much I have to focus on it. Like, I'm so surprised as the first time founder, how much I need to steward this company as it gets larger and larger. And it was such an eye-opener for me because it was so obvious, having come from larger companies all the time, that it's such an important thing. But I'm curious what your founders think about a proactive focus on culture and creating the right environment for team members to be successful.
It's a great question. And I agree with you that when you're at these bigger companies, it's almost a given because the culture is very, very established. There are typically learning and development programs. There's training. And this is true of big companies all over the world. Now, when you come to the startup landscape, it's very different because it's the resources are not typically there, and the culture, I would say, and I think this is true in a big company too. But typically, the culture in a startup company is very much the translation into behavioral norms of that founder's belief system. So whatever they believe to be true, whether codified and formal or not, is the culture that exists at a company. I think when a founder gets arms around it and does things like codifies that and early establishes principles or values or kind of the behavioral norms, the guideposts for how you run a company and how people are kind of expected to show up every day, there's an unbelievable strength in doing that early. It helps them articulate and informs who they hire. It'll inform a performance strategy. So who's doing well, and kind of you have something to benchmark against as people progress through their careers. And it really informs pretty much everything. And there are very famous cultures out there around Amazon and the maniacal focus on customers. I'm sure you could do an unbelievable job of running us through kind of the daily existence and what it's like, the norms, the behavioral norms at Microsoft. But the power of culture is not to be underestimated. And I agree with you that I think certain founders embrace that earlier than others. And the ones that do, I find, have an outsized advantage, both in terms of the talent they're able to attract and, frankly, the performance they're able to drive, because there's no confusion internally around what's expected or what constitutes. It helps people make decisions inside of a company when their managers aren't around.
Yeah, and I think with this particular founder, and I imagine many like them, when you're small and everybody's sort of huddled around and things don't have to be as explicit, but what this person was finding is that they grow, he was starting to see behaviors that he was surprised about, and he couldn't. And what he was realizing is, I need to be way more explicit. And in order to be more explicit, I have to take everything that's sort of in my head and now distill it into those things you're talking about, like a documented set, a codified set of values. It reminds me, a few years ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I have a new leadership framework. Can you take a look at it? Let me know what you think." And I said, "Sure." And he's like, no, but you can't just look at it. I have to run you through it. So I'm going to have a coach walk you through your personal mission statement and your personal values. And I have to be honest, like, I was like, oh man, I don't want to do this. Like, really, I know who I am. I'm like 48 years old. I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
But the process was very eye-opening because yes, there was nothing that came out of it that was like, oh my gosh, I never knew that about myself. But what did come out of it was clarity and focus and intention that I use to this day, even in terms of a mantra and different things like that. So I kind of align it to that. It's not that I would imagine these right from the beginning, there aren't a set of like beliefs that are like deeply ingrained. It's about how you communicate them and then make sure that as the organization grows. I'm just guessing because I'm kind of going through these processes for the first time.
100%. And I think the evolution, it's not only kind of codifying those principles and it's almost like it creates an operating agreement for that company. And if a leader's job is to set the North Star and the direction, the destination, so every single individual knows where you're going. I think great leaders let great talent figure out how to get their own functions there. But in so doing, the general operating principles or values or a set of behaviors that are agreed upon are kind of the guideposts for helping people make decisions and helping that scale and getting ultimately to that destination.
Perfect.
And one thing I will mention, Jamie, that I think is exceptionally well done in the tech market is from a company called Stripe that is in the fintech realm. And they have, and anybody can go to this, I think it's on their website, but on their career section, they have a one-page document that talks about who they are and who is well-suited and who may not be well-suited to their company and why. And I always thought that was so smart and brave of them to put out into the market and have people kind of almost self-select, either lean further towards the company or away from the company before they even interview.
Yeah, clarity is like the best thing. Clear is kind. Someone said that to me recently, and I'm like, I've said it probably 1,000 times since. I'm like, yes, clear is kind. Let's just move forward, move fast. I love that. Okay, I'm going to go check that out. What a great best practice.
It's a great doc. They did an awesome job with that.
Excellent. So aside from Meta, where have you seen leaders like startups or founders like adopt leadership development that's been sort of a best practice or any kind of missteps along the way?
We're no longer, but we were invested early in a company called Poshmark. That was like, I don't know if you know it, but it was a consumer company. My partner, Hans Tung, invested in them early. Unbelievable set of founders. Once again, very privileged to work with them over a series of years. And they built it's kind of a marketplace for secondhand clothing. And they had a globally distributed team, which I find most companies and many teams in our current incarnation of who we are as a race are globally distributed. The talent market is global, and people are optimizing and hiring great people wherever they sit in the world. So to that end, a lot of companies and founders that I see grappling with culture is around how do you coalesce, like bring people together and live the values and live the set of principles that we were just discussing. And the way that Poshmark did this so well is through they created a leadership development program called Leading at Poshmark, where they really articulated what that meant. So to that end, they not only had their operating principles or set of values and behaviors, but they created manager behaviors. Your frontline managers are your amplifiers, either in this for good or for bad. But whichever way it goes, they are your amplifiers across the board. So getting your frontline managers, meaning not just manager by title, but anybody that's leading a team of people at your company who are responsible for those individuals' career growth and helping them like achieve their goals and progress and grow. They identified a set of 7 manager behaviors. And those behaviors, clearly lined up to the overall corporate values, but also articulated really specifically what was expected out of a manager, director, VP, whatever the title, anybody leading a team. It was back to your point about clear as kind. It was super clear what a manager was supposed to do. And they were then evaluated that on that criteria, both on the way in from a hiring perspective and as they progressed through the organization over time.
I love that. I would say organizations of all sizes and in my coaching business, whenever I see a disconnect between what the leader wants to see happen in the, like if you ever see a leader and they're frustrated, like, I can't believe the team is doing this or isn't doing that. And they feel like they've been so clear about what their expectations are. I'm kind of accused of being a Pollyanna sometimes. I generally believe that people want to do a good job. They want to be in compliance with what the leaders want. So I always default to, have you really been clear? You want them to act in this way, but have you defined it? Have you been specific? And it sounds like Poshmark did that, right, with the 7.
They really defined it. Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it gives the managers too a nice guidepost, and it I think people live well in terms of expectations. Fantastic.
I totally agree.
I know that, and what I've observed, especially in working now with organizations of all sizes, is that the leadership profile and the leadership challenges that face very early stage to growth stage to very large, it requires a different kind of leadership, right? And I've even noticed that in reverse, right? Having come from a really big organization, and I work with a founder, and he's like, I don't know, Jamie, can you hang in the startup world? And I'm like, Joseph, I'm going to try.
100%.
Like, I'm going to try to work this out. But tons of growth for me, kind of going in the opposite direction, right? So, what do you notice about founders who are able to consistently step up their game, reinvent themselves to achieve that next level and to be the right, current leader and future leader for the organization?
It's a great question. And I go back to, it's a growth mindset without question, but it's a almost insatiable appetite for learning. So very sincerely learning and learning and learning. When a lot of these founders have many investors, it's always a syndicate or, a varied set of investors around on the cap table, and they have advice coming at them from every which way. So they have a clear sense of themselves. They know how they best learn, and they are very open to learning. And many of them have a coach. I would say the vast majority of the founders, no matter what stage of growth the company is at, they themselves are more often than not, working with an executive coach who helps them, because I think I'm a huge believer in coaching practice. I don't think the Olympics just came and went, and none of those athletes are operating out there at that level without a coach. No. Every one of them has a coach, no matter which country they're coming from. We as humans, it's incredibly helpful to have somebody to dialogue with, to hold up the mirror, to reflect, to share your successes, your frustrations, your challenges, your losses. It's incredibly human to do that and to have that kind of a support system. So I think I would say 2 things, like a learning mindset, and the proactive on the offense around learning is 1, and 2, coaching and a support system of some sort, I think is an imperative for the ones that do it really, really well. They're also, they're willing to fail. I think they're willing to try things, and they adapt quickly. Like I would say, I think I mentioned earlier, some of the best companies out there incorporate customer feedback quickly. They iterate on product and ship it quickly. I think some of the best leaders are not only learners and absorb quickly, they make changes and they adapt. And that might sound cliche, but I think it's very true in a fast-moving world where you don't have a lot of resource. Your market may be shifting beneath you, and you're trying to get next iteration of product, like back to the AI industry. There's going to be a lot of folks at the side of the road who don't move fast enough to maintain pace here.
Oh, interesting. I think that's fascinating. So it's a lot of the same principles, just the conditions might be different, no matter what size company you're in. Like
absolutely.
In a large company, I find the same thing. Like, how do we get the feedback mechanisms going? And you have to work really hard because you're such a big, tend to be slower. Could be a slower organization. And so you have to create the mechanisms. And I think maybe that's less of a challenge in a smaller organization or a startup organization, but same thing. I mean, it sounds like it's all the same. So the leaders that are willing to continue to just be open to feedback, to grow and to fail. And I think probably also going back to where we started with their hiring and their talent strategy, right? Getting the right people at the right time and being able to recruit the right people to I guess, complement the team that's in place.
Yeah. And I would say on the talent strategy, if they make a mistake, they correct the mistake where they're not afraid, they don't hang on to that person. And I truly believe, I don't think there's bad talent out there. I think it's all about the right talent at the right time and people being to go back to our friend Jim Collins around good to great. It really is about the right people in the right seat at the right time. So when something's not working, oftentimes I think most often, that person will probably also be happier and more successful in a different place. So the right thing in that instance is always to make a decision quickly and act on it and then move on from that. So the founders that do that well, also where they can correct mistakes, that everybody makes them, but the ones that act quickly to correct it are often the ones that we see really accelerate up that curve.
I love it. Thank you so much. So we talked a lot about how you guide and coach and advise and build programs for founders. I'd love to shift and talk about your own personal leadership for a second, because I think on two levels, you lead a team. So I would love to hear any leadership principles that are near and dear to you in terms of getting the best out of your team. And then after that, I'm always famous for asking like 3 questions at once. So you can take this wherever. I imagine that influence leadership, which I think is like the highest pinnacle of leadership. There's leadership where people report to you and you sort of have that organizational authority. But your influence leadership, whether it be with the founders, whether it be within Notable, given your role and your expansive role, is significant as well. So I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on specifically influence leadership after you share some of your leadership, overall, general leadership principles.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I consider my role, and I feel very privileged to lead the team that I do because they're phenomenal, and I love working with them every single day. I think it is my role to set direct, so to understand where we're going, to have a lot of input around our destination, and then to help and trust the folks on the team to figure out in their own way how to get there. And to help remove obstacles. So if there are obstacles in their way, I think it's my role to help remove them, but also to see them. I think I try to be a leader that really sees each individual on my team, each leader on my team. I see it, and this is more management maybe than leadership, but on the management front dimension, I would say like it's a one fits one. It's a 1-to-1 sport versus a one-to-many. I think adapting my own style based on every individual and knowing, some people work really different ways. They need different things. So I think it's incumbent on me, the onus sits with me to understand that for every individual on my team and to try to support them accordingly. I'm a believer in kind of the philosophy of situational leadership, which you're probably familiar with.
Absolutely.
Where some people are expert in their field and they don't need a lot of one-to-one micromanagement per se, where you just let them go and get out of their way. Others are new to their craft and they may need a little bit more one-to-one. So I think the main point is to really try to set direction, to create a purpose and some excitement around where you're going, and then help understand the individuals on a one-to-one basis and figure out how to support them as such in a way that works best for them to help them get out and do their best work. I always hope that anybody that works on our team comes away with, whether they stay with us for decades or walk away after a year or two, that they feel like they will be better professionals as a result of having worked with us.
Well, I love that. And I think those things go hand in hand, right? You, to empower, to help, and to trust your team, you have to get to know them one-on-one, right? You have to know, this person I can give a lot of autonomy and this person not yet, right? And how you do that.
That's right.
And in terms of setting some excitement, I'm just going to say, I haven't worked with you really closely, But given that was always you, that was just, I think that's just in the Jen Holmstrom DNA. Way
Maybe.
back, you would, for our friend group and creating followership there, you were always setting an exciting vision. And I was like, but like how? And you're like, yeah, we'll figure it out as we go. And so I bet you
I'm
that's
not
how
the
you
most
lead.
detailed. Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic. Okay, well, thanks for that. And what about influence leadership?
I love influence, and you're right. We are investors in these companies. It is a privilege to be invested in them because they have options in terms of who they partner with. I would almost I would, for our particular scenario, being that we're invested in the companies. We founders certainly do not report to us. We are privileged to be able to be allowed to invest in them and put money in these companies and be on the cap table. I think there's an inherent alignment around helping the companies succeed and helping them get a great exit and get there and change. But that's often to the point of understanding motivation. Not the founder's motivation is not necessarily an exit. It's changing a sector. It's changing an aspect. There's so more often than not a higher purpose for doing what they're doing. So I would call influence leadership more partnering leadership, where in order to because that's what we are a partner to them through that journey of building a new category, of setting an seemingly inachievable goal and really doing everything humanly possible to get there. We partner with them. So do we influence? Do we do that through influence leadership? Maybe, but more than anything, I think it's listening. I think my team tries to pride itself on being the best active listeners in the industry. And to do that, we listen as a mechanism, as a way of understanding. So to suspend kind of judgment or belief systems of our own belief system, even though we've seen a lot of these companies both scale and not scale, and understand where a founder is coming from, where they want to go, the why is really important. And that is a way of enabling what I would call partnership leadership, maybe, where we just figure out how we can best support them getting to where they want to go and helping them get to their end game, which often is slightly nuanced from ours.
So that sounds like a one-on-one sport as well, right? Really getting
Definitely.
to know each and every one of your founders, their unique
Yeah.
aspirations, goals, needs, and then supporting their success, which then has a way of coming around and creating success for Notable and the other investments as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we are an investor. So yeah, we're trying to create returns. But I don't think you can be in venture without having the broader purpose around that, which is, driving there's society forward in terms of like the technology we use and what that enables. Across the board, technology is rapidly changing how we exist, and playing a small part in that is really exciting. So there's a bigger purpose for us, and there's a bigger purpose for these founders, and understanding what the founder's purpose is and motivation helps us hopefully be the partner that we want to be in order to enable those outcomes.
That's excellent. Well, Jen, thank you so much for all this amazing insight. I think the multi-level around what all these founders and your unique perspective in working with so many of them are facing, and what you bring to the table for your own leadership as well has been fantastic. And you've given me a little bit of a nudge to go even deeper around my own understanding and getting up to speed around AI. I've dug in a little bit, but now it feels like a challenge. I need to get there. So thanks for that.
We're trying to create an AI agent here for our founders to share all kinds of things. So I'll keep you posted on that.
All right, great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I ask every one of my guests the same final question. If you could wrap by just giving one piece of advice about leadership, what would that be?
I think providing clarity around the destination and creating a sense of belonging to get there. That is a powerful combination. As simple as it sounds, I think there are layers of complexity. Having your team feel like every single person knows exactly where they're supposed to be going and feeling like they belong on that journey Those are two things that I actually think are some of the most powerful mechanisms to help drive a team forward.
I love that. It's simple the way you say it, right? And a lot behind it. But I would love all of our listeners to really reflect on that for a moment. Does my team have clarity around our destination? Does our team feel a sense of belonging and see themselves on that journey? Beautiful. Thank you.
All right.
Well, Jen,
Thank you,
I so
Jamie.
appreciate you. Gosh, I feel like I want to shadow you for a week and experience all your cool experiences. So,
Oh no, right back at you, my friend. I could learn so much. We don't have enough time for me to learn all that you've learned over
let's
the
make
course
that
of your
happen
career.
one day, or at least just to get together soon. But I appreciate you so much, Jen.
Definitely.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Join us every Tuesday for insider access to executive leadership.